Hello everyone, welcome to Kishore Chess Mentor. In today's section, we shall see the knight endings. This is the part 2 of the video series Interesting Endgames. And to start with, I just wanted to show some of the basic principles in knight endings. So knight is a minor piece, and usually there is a thumb rule that is, say, having just a minor piece on the board. Let's say minor piece meaning either the bishop or the knight is not sufficient for a winning material, so we can call it as a draw. In case like if there is no winning material we call it as, let's say, the major pieces like the queen or the rook or even just a pawn. Okay, as it can be promoted to a queen or a rook. Okay, so we can call that as a winning material. But having a minor piece, let's say a knight or a bishop, cannot be considered as a winning material. Of course, there can be exceptions. So we shall discuss all those things in today's section. To start with, this is the position I am having just a knight. Okay, so and it is not sufficient to checkmate the opponent's king, because like even though like I am able to manage to get the king to the corner of the board. Okay, so I mean like I can give a check, but the king can still run away. So it is not sufficient to checkmate with just a minor piece. Okay, so this is one. And in the next position, let us see. Okay, so we have seen just with the knight, and let's say what can happen if we have something like an extra material, okay, in terms of having a pawn. So here in this position, pawn can be considered as a winning material, as we say. And here what can happen is probably knight can go here, and the king has to move. That's a forced move. And probably like he can I think he can move his knight here, and then if king goes back, okay, so pawn moves checkmate. Okay, so having a winning material is quite a different thing. And let's say, okay, so having said this one, can we assume that, okay, so having a winning material can be a win for white along with the knight, and let's say having just a knight, okay, can we call it as a draw? Okay, in case like if that can be the case, having a knight can be a draw. And can we say that, let's say for example, in this position, okay, black is having a winning material. So if you see here, white has to play for a draw, and black has to play for a win because black is having winning material. So this is understood. Okay, so can we say that, I mean like it is always like white has to play for a draw, because like he doesn't have a winning material, and his opponent black is having a winning material. So can we assume it like that, or can we conclude it like that way? Of course, there are exceptions to it, and we shall see some of the exceptions today. Okay, so to start with, okay, I'm just going to show you a couple of positions, one with colors reversed, meaning like we can see like what white can play, what black can play, and how this can be played. And say for example here, I mean like in the last position we saw black is having a single pawn, and I told you that, I mean like white has to play for a draw and black has to play for a win. And in this position black is having two pawns. Okay, so which makes it pretty clear that based on the assumption that which we saw in the last position, white has to play still for a draw, whereas black can play for a win. And black has got two pawns, and one is much advanced, okay, and the other one is also, I mean like coming along to it. So can we say that this is a win for black, I mean a win for white, or a draw for white, or it's a win for black? So I mean like certainly like black can try to play for a win, but one thing we need to consider here is that look at the position of the king. So the black king has just two squares, and the black king is not supposed to come out. If the black king is able to come out of say the h5, probably this can be a draw or minimum draw. Okay, this can be a draw, or he can try to promote the pawn and make it as a queen. So having said that, it looks like white was having some chances. Okay, so I mean like if we go with the idea, or let's say if we go with something like with the belief that this is not going to work, because like white has to still play for a draw, we will never find the move for white to win. Okay, so we still find moves like which can be a draw. Okay, to start with, how can we proceed with this position? Let's try to understand this one. I mean like let's say if the knight was able to come to say f2 or g3 and give a check, and if the king was not able to move, I think like that's a checkmate. If the king wasn't able to move, meaning like I mean like the h2 also has to be protected. So I mean like we cannot protect h2, right? If the king goes to g3 and say what can happen is the king can go to g1, okay, and I mean like it's out of the corner, right? So this cannot happen. So then what can we play here in this position? So first we need to see like we need to take control of the h2 square and we need to force him to make the move h2, and then the next move like we can bring our knight to g3 or say f2 and give a checkmate. Let us see like how he is proceeding with this one. Knight here. He takes control of this particular h2 square and pawn moves, this is quite forced, and king goes to f1. He is vacating the king for the knight to occupy the f2 square, and there is no move for black. He has to move h2 and the knight goes to f2 and it's a checkmate, right? So I mean like it is not that white cannot play for a win. White can play for a win. Okay, it all depends upon our opponent's piece positions also. Okay, so here this is one. Let's say for example instead, okay, if for knight to f6 he plays say king to h1, okay, knight to g4, pawn here, king here. So this is one, and straight away, okay, so knight here, and say if he plays g5, knight goes to g4 check, king here, pawn moves right here. Okay, so let's get back to the position like wherein like um, it is black to move. Okay, so the same position, I mean like it's black to move. So if we see this position, I think this is quite a different position, or let's say here the same approach cannot work because when the knight comes to say okay, so it was black's move, knight king here, the king's position has changed, and knight f6, king here, and you know what, knight goes here, king comes, pawn comes, and king goes back to f2. Instead, usually like we used to play knight f2 and say a checkmate, right? Here we cannot say knight f2 and say call it as a checkmate because the king is having a square called h2 to move. Okay, and the most important thing here is that I think like he will look base and means to escape from this one, meaning say pawn here. Okay, so I mean like now it is quite difficult to, I mean like we can play for a draw, but still I think like we have let the advantage of giving a checkmate to black. So what we need to do is we need to wait. Okay, so he has to move to h2, right? And here the king goes back to f2. So what happens is pawn moves here. And let's say for example, if king goes to f1, saying like next move I'm going to move my knight to f2, this is not going to work because it ends up in stalemate because black has run out of moves. So what happens is now we need to understand that we need to give him some time, right? So king f2, pawn here. So we know that I mean like the pawn has went to h2 and there is one check that is required either on f2 or g3, and once that is there I think it's a checkmate. Okay, but we need to give black some moves so that like we cannot call it as a stalemate. So let's move the knight to e3. So now you are having a pawn move. You have to move the pawn, and now knight goes to f1, and then pawn moves is forced, knight into g3 checkmate. And on the other way around, you can pretty much play here, right? You can also play knight here, and again pawn here, knight into. Okay. So the whole idea lies in this. You need to push the king to the corner. Okay, you need to make him move the pawn, and let's say it has to block the square, say h2, and then the knight has to be right there on time at f2 or g3, and the king has to prevent the king. Let's say the white king has to prevent opponent's king from coming out. So this is the main idea behind it. Okay, so to start with, king here, knight here, and so knight f2, won't work, so king f2. Okay, so let's go to the next position. Okay. Okay, so this particular position, okay, so here in this particular position if you see, okay, so the pawn is quite advanced and we are having so far like we have been seeing with double pawns for black, and right now like it's a single pawn for black, and we know the concept of getting the pawn to h2 and then bringing the knight to g3 or say f2 on time to give a checkmate. So how are we going to achieve that? We need to control the right squares, okay, and I mean like we need to keep the king and the knight rightly on the right squares when the pawn goes to h2, okay. Say for example in this position, to start with there are two options, either like white can play king f2 or he can play knight g3. So let's see one by one, okay. So to start with king f2, so king here, knight here. The idea is that I mean like we are trying to bring the pieces to the right squares. So here king f2, king here, knight here. So king here, knight here, king here, knight here, king here, knight here. So what happens now is that the knight has reached a square wherein like it controls h2, okay, and black has to move the pawn on to h2 and then knight goes to say g3. I think like this is the only square, okay, let's say this can be the only square, or to put the other way around it can be there on g4, okay, and then it can go to knight f2 checkmate, okay, in case like if pawn moves to h2. So what we have tried to achieve here, that is let's say king goes to f2, king here, and we wanted to bring the knight to the right square, say f1, so the king cannot go to say h2, okay, and it shouldn't happen with giving a check. Let's say for example in this, I mean like if the knight was here on say f1, okay, and the king goes back to h1, and you know what, we have to make a move, right? We have to make a move. When you make a move, then the king goes back again to h2, okay. So there lies the difference. So he is making all these moves in order to push him, okay. So right now in this position the king is there on h1, okay, and king f2, king here, knight here, and all these moves has been played, okay, in order to make the king to h1, okay, and take the control of h2, bringing the knight right there on f1. So pawn here, knight g3 checkmate. Okay, let's go to the second variation. The second variation is knight g3, and in knight g3 king here, so knight here. So there is no need to worry because like the king cannot come to g3 and the g3 is being guarded by the knight. So what happens is king goes back to h1, that is quite forced. So now king goes to f2, king goes here, and now knight here, king here, knight here, again knight to f1. So when the pawn moves, knight goes to g3. So the plans can be changed based upon, let's say, the pawn structure or the number of pawns. The whole point or the whole principle lies in bringing the king to the corner and making him move his own pawns, and his own pawns like I mean like will stop the king from coming out, and you can have a single piece or the minor piece in the knight and you can give a checkmate. So it is not that a minor piece like having just a minor piece on the board is not always a draw. It can be other ways also. So I hope you have liked this position, and if you like this video you can like, comment and share, and if you want to see more videos like this you can subscribe to my channel Kishore Chess Mentor. Thank you so much.